How's it going, everyone? David Hoffman here with Behind the Catch Fence. I'm here at Williams Grove Speedway, Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. We're getting ready. We're all psyched up for the 62nd National Open. It's a Friday here, and we're actually going to give you guys a little bit of a treat. We are going to head over to Donny Schatz's pit, and he's going to give us the 10th-time World of Outlaws sprint car champion, mind you. He's going to give us a personal tour of his sprint car, give you the ins and outs of everything. So let's go take a look.
Okay, for people that haven't been around a sprint car or unfamiliar with what they actually are, they're really not any. There's not a piece on these that's made for a stock car or any manufactured car on today's highway. Everything's purpose built, from the frames to the front axles to these wings. The way everything works, they have some real old school technology with modern day things of today that are very light and stronger, better. So from the front to the back of a car, you basically have a beam front axle, meaning there's no independent front suspension. What one side does, it creates the opposite on the other side, and it's made out of chromoly tubing. This is the torsion arms. That's what holds the suspension. That's what holds the car up. And they're just a steel bar. The torsion bars are just a steel bar. That's how we get our spring rate. The bigger the bar, the more spring rate. The smaller the bar, the less the spring rate. The shocks, that's where today's technology comes into play. Everybody kind of has virtually the same shocks. There's a lot of technology goes in, and we all have shock dynos, and we can kind of manipulate where and what we want, what each driver likes, with different things all across the board.
You mentioned with like the shocks and that kind of thing. I know you've been in sprint car racing for a lot of years now. Just how have you seen is setting up the race car and getting like the shocks, for instance, how have you seen that evolve and kind of change where you guys have to do different things?
Well, each person likes something different. What happens in this sport a lot is somebody gets onto something, and one of the guys that works there tells this guy, and then it kind of educates the entire pit area. I think we're all byproducts of back in the Carl Kinzer and Kenny Woodruff days of what goes on, and then someone tries something a little different, and it's very hard to keep things close to yourself and quiet. So, but the cars are very unique. Obviously, they have a nose wing. They don't function very well without a nose wing. So when you see guys knock them off, the cars don't handle very well. And obviously, the big top wing, that does a lot more than people think. A lot of people think that it pushes the car in the racetrack. It really doesn't. This sideboard that sticks up pulls the car through the corner. That's what helps you enter it with all that speed. And there is a factor as the faster you're going where it pushes a little bit. But when you get on a short track, there's not a lot of push down from the top wing. The only thing you can really adjust in the car is forward and back. It's powered by the power steering, which, like I said, everything is purpose built. The angle we can adjust manually before the race starts and things like that, but then when you come to the motor, I mean, everybody has a little different configuration of things motor-wise. So obviously we have Ford Performance. We're really the only one in the pit area that has that. And as you get back to the rear end, they're all quick change. We can change gears in a matter of 30 seconds, very quick. Brakes are very good. Fuel tank holds about 32 gallons, which is a lot of fuel. It's very hard to keep the tanks on these cars when you crash with them full of fuel. So wheel widths are a little different. Obviously, this car has two pair of left rears just sitting here in the pits, but normally the right rear is a lot bigger, and the difference in between the two, the stagger is stagger and anywhere between 11 and 15 inches of stagger, depending on what personal preference is. The safe part of the car is here. Obviously, that's where things have come a long ways. The carbon fiber seat does a lot to keep from the driveline penetrating the bottom of the seat, which has caused serious injuries. But most importantly, the seat insert, which is molded to my body and has 1.5 inches of impact foam in case something drastic happens. It takes all that energy away from going through my body. It takes that away from the driver and pretty much allows you to try to stay safe. There's no perfect fail-safe in any of this, but for the most part, everything's pretty safe. All the body and components, a lot of the bolts are either aluminum or titanium for weight, and the body parts are carbon fiber, and there's probably more of a safety side of the carbon fiber. It's hard to get things to go through, especially the arm guard, since there's really nothing over there. So they're very well manufactured cars. Guys spend a lot of time and money and effort to make them look nice. You can see they take great pride in how they look and how they maintain them, and they basically get torn apart every day, right down to bare, to check things over and make sure that there's nothing that can fail. And there's certain components that are life limited, just like an aircraft, where we run X amount of races on a rear end and X amount of races on a front axle, and same thing with spindles and hubs and wheels. And obviously those things change if you're in an incident where you crash or you hit someone or there's some sort of contact, but they're very unique.
I was going to say, when it comes to, I mean, how many races, 72 plus a year, how many cars do you guys end up going through? Just kind of depend on things?
You know, we try to start out with 6 complete cars at the beginning of the year, and then if you have one tore up, we normally try to replace one as it goes on, and try to maintain that, because you can have a bad weekend where you unload your entire trailer, which there's 2 cars upstairs there, so that it can happen. Doesn't seem to happen that often, but there's times you got to be prepared for the worst and expect the best, I guess. But it does happen, and it happens quite regular to certain people, and we're just been very fortunate to be able to stay out of most of that mess.
And just final question for me, just when it comes to, you hear about setups and race cars and the different series for you guys, what are kind of the key components that you can use and can kind of put in here, maybe find an advantage somewhere at different racetracks?
Trying to get a good baseline where your ride heights are at, your shock, where the balance is in your shocks, weights, torsion bars. The tires are probably the weak link on this whole thing. That we all run virtually the same tire, and years ago when there was different manufacturers, each one had its own little quirk on this track or that track. So as we get everybody with closer in the tire game, and it really makes things more fine towards all them other adjustments. And if there's people that can figure out how to manipulate the tires in a certain way that's maybe not the way it should be, but I guess if you don't get caught, it doesn't really matter. So, that's something that there's always people in here. The people are very crafty. They're very ingenuitive, and there's always someone that'll come up with some sort of way to try to do something a little bit better than others.